The following is a presentation of Team Bonding, providing more than 100 live, virtual, or hybrid corporate team building activities for companies around the world. Visit teambonding.com to schedule your event now.
On this episode of Team Building Saves the World,
I think the Kiwi attitude and mentality is sort of roll your sleeves up, let's get through it.
let's talk about the 1 to 10. When do I know what number I need to be looking for?
It's around giving them fun, but with learning and with value. The cost of getting it wrong far outweighs the cost of getting it right.
Hello, team. It's me, your old friend Rich Renansland, host of Team Building Saves the World, the show where I speak to the leaders and innovators of the team building industry from all across the globe, trying to find out what about that industry is so important, especially in the world of today. And today, we're going back to around the world. I'm reaching all the way out to Auckland, New Zealand to talk to the leader and creator of Team Up Events, Stu Robertson. But first, I need to send my thanks out to my supporters at the Catalyst Team Building Network. Find out more about the world's largest network of team building providers at catalystglobal.com. And now, team, join me in welcoming all the way from Auckland, New Zealand, the managing director and founder of Team Up Events, Mr. Stu Robertson. Hello, Stu. Hey, what's the weather like out there in Auckland?
Look, we're in the middle of a really good spell of weather. It's been hot and dry, lots of time for the beach, getting into the great outdoors of New Zealand.
That's it. I am officially jealous. But Stu, my team out there is going to wonder about you. They're going to wonder who this guy is that I've been talking to. So why don't you go ahead? Let's tell them a little bit about you, Stu Robertson.
Look, we've Team Up Events in New Zealand. We were founded 7 years ago off the back of my experience in the industry for about 10 years prior to that. In terms of my background, I've always been working with high-performing teams or high-performing athletes. Come from a football playing and coaching background, and then have transferred that experience or skill sets into the corporate team building or team development sort of space. So that's me in a nutshell.
You've been doing this for about 10 years, is that correct?
So yeah, Team Up about 7 years, and then about 10 years experience previous to that. So I'm 15 to 20 years around there.
What, however, makes you go from your sports background to team building?
I think it was a little bit of a natural progression. So obviously I've been working in the sports industry, and then there was just a natural progression of those skill sets into a corporate team environment rather than a sports setting. Opportunity to come and work with businesses and really help them develop their people, grow their business, and become high-performing teams in their own right.
What do you see as the major difference between, say, a professional sporting team and a corporate team?
There's a lot of similarities and a lot of differences. In terms of similarities, most teams we find already have the tools and resources and skill sets to be successful. It's just a matter of helping them unlock the potential. But obviously the big difference is sports teams, full-time professional athletes, that's all they're focusing on and working on, and often their lives outside of sport will revolve around sport. Obviously, in a corporate setting and a business setting, we've got to juggle our personal lives with our work lives. So we've got to try and keep that balance.
So let's talk about that. Is that something that you help people to accomplish, discovering the difference between the two? Or is it more about when you go in, you're all about the corporate life?
Look, I think most people, especially now, coming up to post-COVID in some parts of the world, it's around that work-life balance and understanding how one can impact the other, both positively and sometimes negatively. So it's helping teams understand, building better relationships, understanding communication styles, personality types. All these things can have a huge benefit, not only in the workplace, but also in your personal lives.
Can you give me an example of something like that? Like, let's talk about something from someone's corporate life that you've seen that you think could actually assist them in their more personal day.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of it comes around communication styles. And one of the products we use called Extended Disc will give insights into personality types, both conscious, how we think we need to be, and unconscious, how we actually are or how we really are. Sometimes when we take our clients or participants through these assessments or these workshops, it can be quite confronting, and sometimes the reaction can be, this report doesn't reflect me. However, what we always say to those participants is take it home, give it to your husband, your wife, father, mother, maybe even your children. Quite often the feedback they'll get is, yeah, this is actually you in a nutshell. So sometimes it's around raising self-awareness, that can be a big part.
But now let's go back for a second, because you had talked about, coming out of the COVID life. New Zealand had a very different start to the whole COVID pandemic than we did here in the US. As I understand it, you guys went into lockdown very quickly with, I don't want to say draconian measures, but certainly an idea of keeping the nation safe. How did COVID work out for you over there in New Zealand?
Look, I think the first thing is we have been impacted by COVID, but just like everywhere else around the world, our lockdowns may not have been as long or continued with the same effects as many other countries have experienced. But, we were impacted. We had, businesses shutting down, people working from home, a rapid switch from, the social connections used to get day to day in the workplace to being completely gone, and everyone being online, Zoom, Teams, WebEx, etc. Last year, 2020, obviously, we probably had two main lockdowns. We've tended to bounce back pretty quickly. And then this year, we've just had in Auckland and New Zealand, we've had a couple of weeks of lockdown through February. But again, I think the Kiwi attitude and mentality is sort of roll your sleeves up, let's get through it. And then also when we come out of it, let's get back to doing business. Let's get back to meeting in person. Let's get back to face-to-face. We all know the value of it. And if anything, you crave it a little bit more when you don't have the opportunity to do it day to day.
Take us back, if you can, to those early days for Team Up events. What did it look like? How did you know this was coming? And what did you guys decide to do?
To be fair, we were a little bit behind the rest of the world. You could say that we should have seen it coming, but it did hit us pretty quick. And it was about a year ago, actually. I think it was a year ago, 3 days ago, 19th of March was when New Zealand went into lockdown. It came out of the blue, the borders shut, then we went into a full 4-week lockdown. And, the real key thing for any business in New Zealand then was, how do we pivot? How do we change? How do we adjust? Now we have to have this remote working environment. How do we balance having kids at home, but also, keeping the wheels turning from a work perspective? For Team Up events, it was, how do we connect our clients? How do we give them the same great service, the same engagement? How do we build those same connections, but just in a virtual environment now? So again, through the Catalyst Network, we're able to, to brainstorm, to create, to innovate with our partners around the world, to develop a full suite of remote or virtual products, which are continuing to go strong to this day. Obviously, we know in New Zealand, having moved now back to predominantly face-to-face, that's where people want to be. Yeah. But when we do have these lockdowns, like a couple of weeks ago, we're now in this great situation where we can pivot really easily, and we can say to our clients, hey, look, your event can still go ahead. We can still build these great connections and relationships, but now we're just changing the venue, essentially. Instead of doing it in your offices or in your conference room or out down around the city, now we're just taking the venue online. So we're very fortunate. It was a lot of hard work, but now we have this full complement, I suppose, of face-to-face hybrid events, which can be a mix of both face-to-face and virtual, and of course a full suite of online and remote events.
Nice. And do you find that you're getting a lot of that hybrid, or is it mostly one or the other?
To be really honest, with the hybrid for us, it tends to be between our partners in Australia and ourselves, where we have companies who have an office in Australia and New Zealand. Traditionally, they've come together in one location, and we've had a live event. Now we're having events where it's being delivered live in Australia, live in New Zealand, but connected virtually over conferencing platforms like WebEx or Teams or Zoom and so on. So, there are some benefits that come out of it.
Yeah. Are you still seeing that people are hesitant to gather again, or is it something that they're eager to do?
In New Zealand, very much eager. People, there's no substitute for face-to-face. I think that's one of the big learnings. It's almost like it went through a little bit of a trend. At the beginning of 2020, everyone's like, remote and virtual's great. Working from home is great. We love it. And then I think the longer it's gone on, the more people want to get back into the office face-to-face. They want those social connections, those relationships, those interactions that we just, you do miss when you are working remotely.
What about you yourself? Any personal preferences, whether it's live, virtual, or hybrid of the two?
For myself, you just can't beat the interaction of a live crowd. Running events virtually is a skill set in itself, as I'm sure you'd know, running these podcasts with people all around the world. Sometimes you can miss that little bit of interaction with the crowd or with the teams and participants in a virtual setting compared to a live setting. For me personally, I love a big crowd. There's no doubt about that.
Well, what do you prefer, outdoor or indoor? I mean, coming from a sporting background like you have, your outdoor events must be insanely good.
Yeah, look, again, it's more around matching events to clients' outcomes, and I suppose the real kick for us, or the driving factor for us, is how much can we help the client? How can we benefit the participants? How can we help drive them forward? Now, whether that's in an outdoor setting, an indoor setting, evening, whatever it might be, that's sort of secondary to actually being able to go, hey, we've walked away from this event, we've made a difference, we've helped create some relationships, maybe break down some barriers, open up some doors to that particular team so that they can drive forward to achieve their goals. So that's probably the big driver for us, rather than which particular style of event. Just like there's not the perfect tool for every job, there's not the perfect event for every team. It's around digging a little bit deeper, understanding the team, the business, and what their drivers or objectives are, and then really trying to customize or tailor an event that's going to deliver some real return on investment and some value for that client.
Are you guys still finding that there are still directives you have to follow regarding COVID when you get back to live events? And what kind of...
Look, I think a lot of it in New Zealand is, yes, we are sort of governed by alert levels, and we have restrictions depending on what alert level we're sitting in nationally in New Zealand. So at the moment, we're in alert level 1. There's no restrictions on gatherings, but where possible, there are guidelines to follow around good hygiene and social distancing and these types of things. And, I think as part of everyone in New Zealand, our team of 5 million, everyone's really committed to stamping out the virus and allowing businesses to keep operating, allowing people to be able to come back into the workplace. So people have been really disciplined and really supportive of following, I suppose, what you'd call best practice, so that we can enjoy the freedom that we currently have in New Zealand.
You still doing masks and so forth?
Masks come into effect at alert level 2 and 3
Okay.
in New Zealand, and that's mainly on things like public transport. But in terms of at the moment, you can walk down to the supermarket, to the shopping mall. There's hand sanitizer everywhere. We have QR codes where you can scan in to record where you've been, but there's no sort of restrictions around group numbers. I mean, we had some great big rugby games played in New Zealand over the weekend with huge crowds. We've just had the America's Cup, which we very proudly defended. And, life is pretty much back to normal. The big one for us in New Zealand is the borders are closed. And that's probably the one that we feel the most. So New Zealand very reliant on tourism, just as with our business events, groups coming into New Zealand. Right. And while those borders remain closed, it does take a hit on our economy.
But you're still finding, even with closed borders, that virtually you're able to actually still keep those people coming in?
Look, I think with the virtual stuff, with our borders closed, it's around connecting our Australian clients, New Zealand clients with offices in Asia. We're able to still connect to those through the power of team building, I suppose. But in terms of the, bringing them in for these incentive conferences or business events where they would come and spend 3-4 days around the country, those are obviously very much on hold at the moment, sadly.
That's some fascinating stuff, Stu. Can you hold on for me for 1 second? Because I want to tell all my team out there about Catalyst Team Building Network, an association of team building providers. With representatives in over 90 countries speaking more than 20 languages, the Catalyst Network is widely regarded as the voice of the team building industry. Network members share resources, best practices, and business opportunities. Catalyst partners are learning from each other and pushing the boundaries of what is possible in team building. Catalyst Network members share a common goal of creating highly relevant, socially responsible, good value experiences for their clients. For more information, please visit catalystglobal.com. The Catalyst Team Building Network, the world's largest network of team building providers. Let's talk about team up events. You have the motto of challenge, inspire, and achieve. What does that actually mean to you, Stu?
Yeah, so those 3 words are quite powerful and quite prominent in what we try to do every day for our clients. Obviously, it's around challenging traditional ways of thinking, opening up people's eyes to new ways of thinking or new ways of looking at things. Mm-hmm. And then obviously the inspire is inspiring the power of teamwork. So getting people to understand their, I suppose, individual importance and collective value to the organization or to the team. And then obviously the achieve is really helping our clients achieve their goals. So understanding what they're working towards and how we can help them take positive steps towards achieving those goals. So it's very central to what we do as a team building or what I like to call a team engagement company. Nice. That's really trying to develop teams. It's not just about having a fun time together. Obviously, we always say fun is central to any event because fun helps create the engagement. But it's actually about how can we have the fun with the value, with some learning that can be transferred back into the workplace environment or some learning that can help us build more positive or more effective, efficient relationships within the workplace. So yeah, it's really important to us. We think it fits really nicely with who we are as a company and a brand, and also gives our clients an insight into what we want to, assist them with, I suppose.
It sounds fantastic. I love just the philosophy of. I very much try to live up to that kind of thing myself over here in the States. But you were talking about, rather, can you give me an example of an event that you do where you can actually have someone be inspired by it and learn? Because a lot of what I hear from people outside of the industry is, how does this really help? Or is it just an hour and a half, 2 hours of fun so we get to relax a little bit? What is the difference that you see?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think, first of all, it'll come with the brief for the event. And we always talk, and I'm sure you've heard before from a number of my colleagues from the Catalyst Network, but we always talk about the scale of 1 to 10. And 1 at this end of the scale might be team bonding, shared experience, pure fun, an opportunity just to relax.
Right.
And enjoy the company of your colleagues and maybe learn a little bit more about them in an informal environment. There's that saying that you learn more about a person in an hour of play than in a lifetime of conversation. So that's sort of your 1 end of the scale. And then at the 10 end of the scale, you have your very sort of outcome focused team building, team development. There are specific messages or specific, not issues, but maybe performance traits that we want to address, whether it's around breaking down silo mentality or cross-functional communication. So the first part really is finding out where the client wants the event to sit, or what their objectives are, so we can match an event on that scale that's going to suit.
Okay.
And then it comes into the delivery. So how we tailor the delivery to the client, that could be based on what type of business they are, the demographic, the gender split, the age range, their functions within the business. So again, it's around tailoring your delivery. And then the real power comes in the debrief, and how you can then relate some of those scenarios and situations that you've been able to create through experiential learning in the program or the event, and transfer them back to the workplace. So when this situation arose in the program, how did we react? What did we do? What did we do well? What could we have done better? What might we do differently next time? Right. And then how can we relate that back into the work environment? So sometimes a lot of the specific work examples can come from the clients themselves. And for us, I suppose, as the facilitators or providers, we would speak to the general, but having the reinforcement where you can have a debrief where groups can go, actually, light bulb moment. I know when we're talking to our accounts team, or when we're in engineering, or whatever it might be, this happens sometimes. And now I can see the relevance of what's happened in this event and how we might adjust ourselves back in the workplace.
So let's go back. Let's talk about the 1 to 10. Let's say, for example, I am like the head of HR for a major corporation. And when should I know, not only when it's time to actually bring my team together, bring you folks in to come and liven up my team, to give them that team building experience, but also, when do I know what number I need to be looking for?
Absolutely. Well, look, most event organisers, HR, for example, there'll be a purpose to the reason for meeting. It might be an induction, it might be a conference, it might be a strategic team planning day. And depending on the theme of the reason why they're coming together, that will have a big input into the type of event and where might sit on that scale. So, for example, a client might be coming together. It might be a graduate induction. These people don't know each other so well. So one of the big drivers is going to be getting them to really mix and mingle, to meet each other, to understand the different personality styles in the group. And so that might naturally lean the program one way or another. Where a client has specific objectives or content that they want to intertwine into the event, again, that can direct the program or the recommendations either way on that scale. So if they're launching new products, they want to intertwine that into the event, it might actually become outcome and object focused rather than just pure fun. Or if they're launching new organizational values, for example, then it's going to be very outcome focused. It's around giving them fun, but with learning and with value, relating it back to the work environment.
Now, you also mentioned the individual importance versus your collective value. What's the difference? And how do you have one prove the other?
Everyone wants to go to a workplace where they feel part of a team, where they have great relationships, where they can be positive contributors to the team, and where they feel valued. So the individual importance piece is really important, because that's the engagement. That's what makes people be an active participant in the team, not a passive participant. So first, people actually need to understand the role they play in the team and the value that they bring. Now, whether they're understanding their own skill sets, understanding their own personality style, understanding part that they play in the overall team. So the cog and the wheel type scenario. So we really focus on trying to open up people's views, not only for themselves, but also the way they look at their colleagues and understanding their individual importance and the strengths and attributes and qualities, characteristics that they bring. And once we have that, then we go from this transition from passive participants to active participants in the team. And that's when we're able to really understand that when, the sum of our parts is always going to be greater than the individual parts. So it's around how do we all contribute to an effective and efficient team.
Do you have a way of pointing that out to people? Like, can you give me an example of an event where somebody didn't really see how they helped add to their teamwork?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think with some of those examples, very, very program specific, but if you look at something like the Big Picture, which would probably be one of the most famous products in the Catalyst team building network, if one person doesn't play their role or contribute or communicate, or if the line of communication doesn't flow to all of the members, then we could end up with a canvas that's not quite right. The colors don't quite blend. So the overall end product in the Big Picture is a fantastic example of, hey, if we look at these 15 or 16 canvases, they're perfect. This is a great example of when we're all on the same page, when we're all pulling in the same direction, the communication's good. Look how efficient, how effective we can be, how well we can perform. And hey, maybe let's have a look at these 2 or 3 canvases that, not quite as good, but an example of, hey, when we maybe neglect our communication a little bit, or the information doesn't flow through the whole team, then obviously that's a reminder of the importance of that communication, of that team, and of everyone playing their role within the team to contribute to the final outcome.
Do you have a personal favorite event you like to lead, or that you liked? I mean, you're the boss now, so I can't imagine you're digging in, you're rolling up your sleeves and getting into it with everybody. But do you have a favorite one?
The Big Picture, I would say, in terms of connecting with the client, the Big Picture, we design an image which represents the client's business, the team, incorporates all of the key outcomes, whether it's values, vision, products, whatever it might be.
Right.
And then the company as a whole essentially draw and paint this image without ever seeing the whole image. So the program's very powerful. It's collaborative, strong emphasis on communication, and the end output directly reflects the way that team or business has worked together during that 2-hour or 3-hour period. So the product's high impact, it has genuine wow factor, but you look and talk to the participants post-event and they have this real sense of ownership around what they've created and what they've done. And as I mentioned before, the best bit isn't that it's all perfect, because it never is perfect, but no team is perfect. It's actually showing up the bits that, hey, this was really great and look how good we can be. And
right.
Here's a reminder of why these other things are important and we need to keep working on them and focusing on them day to day. So that particular program for me is an absolute standout and never fail. Another one that I thoroughly enjoy, and I actually just ran the first one last week for over a year, is a product we developed here in New Zealand called the Situation Room, which is very much a business simulation type event around agile ways of working. Now, pre-COVID and before COVID came in, there was a big shift in a lot of organizations around the world to agile ways of working. So it's being able to adapt and adjust and often not have to see the whole picture, but just know that whatever we're working on at the moment is going to play a role in what the team's driving towards. So this particular program, very high impact, time bound, lots of time pressure, and lots going on all at once, focusing on those agile ways of working. So that particular product, one, we're very proud of at Team Up, that we developed ourselves. We launched through the Catalyst Network in 2019. Excellent. We're expecting big things in 2020 before COVID, and obviously with the shift or the focus to remote or virtual events, that one's sort of taken a backward step over the last 12 months. But I'm sure as we head back to face-to-face events over the next 12 to 18 months, it will become a strong product around the world.
Fantastic. Tell us more about Situation Room, because that's one I'm not familiar with.
Yeah, so the focus of the Situation Room is essentially it's around an illicit trade scenario. There's a briefcase that's been recovered. This is sort of setting the theme for you. A briefcase that's been recovered. So each team has a briefcase on their table, and quite different from a facilitation perspective, that all of the facilitation is done via video, pre-recorded videos.
Huh.
And essentially you get a little video update, a status update, and then you get some clues as to how to open a compartment within your briefcase. Inside that compartment, there are a number of challenges that you have to complete in order to find out information around this developing scenario or situation. So in New Zealand, we think of, sort of the White House and the big boardroom in the White House when there's a crisis and a situation. And it's how do we react to stimuli? How do we react to time pressure? How do we react to information or lack of information? And then how do we coordinate ourselves as a team? Because there's so much going on at one time. Is our teamwork coordinated, or is it chaotic? Are there missing links in the chain, or are we able to remain effective even when under pressure? So yeah, very high pressure event. It has a bit of a sort of a Bourne Identity, Men in Black sort of type theme to it. Yeah, one that we've delivered around the world already. In fact, we've had events run in United Kingdom and Ireland. We ran a situation room in Mexico for some of our Catalyst partners. We've run it in Bali and Indonesia. And the last one we ran overseas was in Macau, and Hong Kong. So it's already spreading, I suppose, around the world. And we look forward to seeing that grow more, probably 2022 and beyond.
Just explain to my team, if you can, how do you manage that virtually?
Yeah, so this is very much a face-to-face event. Obviously, when we made the shift to virtual, that was one event we felt would lose too much of what makes it special if we tried to make it a virtual event. So it's very much a face-to-face event, very tactile, so it does rely on the touch and feel quite a bit. But in terms of rolling it out globally from New Zealand, using a virtual setting, so, we run training for the program virtually for, facilitators all around the world for our Catalyst partners, use of video training as well. But yeah, this is one event that's a virtual, remains very much face-to-face.
I am always amazed by the Catalyst partners and how they manage to actually not only trade these events, but also the best practices and the new ways of doing anything, especially at the beginning of COVID, trying to take everything to virtual. Just to give you an example from my own personal life, I walked into my boss's office one day a little over a year ago, and he looked right at me and he goes, "Hey, I just want you to know that no matter what you've heard, we're going to keep this going. We're talking right now with other Catalyst partners. We're figuring out how to make the switch." And I'm looking at him going, "What are you even talking about?" Because you folks, having seen it and how quickly we needed to react and respond, we're already beginning the steps to change it. Do you have any other examples about how your team, either Catalyst or your own personal facilitation team, managed to really step up and make this all work for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, I think it's more just the willingness of the network to really band together and find ways that we can help our clients, which, of course, if we can help our clients, that helps all of us as individual businesses around the world. Look, the power of the Catalyst network is the partners. There's just absolutely no substitute for the knowledge and experience that you have from the partners when we combine together, when we come together to develop new products or discuss best practice, or even sharing information around, these platforms that we're using virtually now. What are the best platforms for particular scenarios or events? How do we adjust our facilitation style to suit remote or virtual delivery versus live delivery? So yeah, the Catalyst network on the whole, the partners are really what make it tick. And I suppose from a client's perspective, that's when you engage a Catalyst partner, you're not just engaging that one person in that one country. They've got the power, the experience, the expertise of the whole network around the world and going into helping your event be a success. And, quite often you say, would you wouldn't send your child to a school with unqualified teachers.
Right.
So why would you use a team building provider that doesn't have that qualification, that experience and that expertise behind it? And the reality is when you do engage in a team building event, for a lot of our clients, it might only happen 2 or 3 times a year. So you've only got 2 or 3 opportunities to really have high impact, high value. And one of my favorite sayings is the cost of getting it wrong far outweighs the cost of getting it right. And what should be a fantastic experience for your team, if you don't get it right, can actually be very, very detrimental. So yeah, when you engage with Catalyst, that's what you're engaging with.
Speaking of getting it wrong, one of my favorite things that my listeners love is hearing personal stories, either for you or one of your facilitation team, about when something went so completely wrong, like an unforeseen circumstance hit, and you had to do a personal pivot on the day of. Do you have any stories like that you could share with us? You don't have to get into client names or your own facilitator
No,
name if you don't like.
absolutely. Traveling internationally for events is something that, requires its own level of experience, and you have to go through some road bumps to build that experience. But a really good story was flying up to Fiji to run a big picture event, and we had to organize an exhibition wall. And so we use these exhibition walls to hang the big picture canvases on to do the reveal at the end of the event. So it's very, very pivotal. It's essentially you drop the sheet and there's the image hanging, that all the canvases and so on. So going up to Fiji, yeah, absolutely. So going up to Fiji, obviously we can't take a 10 meter by 2 meter high exhibition wall with us on the plane. So we need to organise that locally in Fiji. And in Fiji, there's a little saying, I'm sure you've heard the saying before, but everything's on island time. It's a very, relaxed place, sunshine, everything's a little bit more slower and I suppose a little bit more casual. So we engaged with a supplier up in Fiji to provide us with an exhibition wall. We sent them photos of what we needed, very clear, this is exactly what we need. And then we get up there, and the exhibition wall's being delivered on the morning of the event. So it's going to arrive at 9 o'clock. The event starts at 1 p.m. No problems. So we're all feeling really confident. We're flowing up. We've got our canvases, our paint, our brushes, everything we need, 150 people. And then obviously we're in the conference room setting up and waiting for our exhibition wall to arrive. And it arrives. And it's just completely different to what we'd ordered. So the normal scenario with the exhibition walls is they're actually got a fabric covering on them that you can Velcro straight to.
Right.
So the wall that they brought up was almost just a pure timber wall. But the other thing was it wasn't flat. It had ruts on it. So you couldn't, even if you had, Velcro or sticky tape or anything, there's just no way you could hang these canvases to the wall. So obviously we're, sort of 2 hours away from our event starting, and now we don't have a 10 meter by 2 meter exhibition wall. So that's where, you've got to innovate, you've got to think on your feet, and you've got to adapt. And most importantly, the event's got to go ahead. And there was nothing that was going to stop that event going ahead. So, a little bit of talking to the hotel. This was at the Sheraton in Fiji, and talking to the banquet staff, and we managed to locate some 2.2 meter trestle tables that we then were able to stand up on their end and use the original wall as a bit of bracing. And we created a flat wall on about almost like a 30-degree angle. That we were then able to stick our canvases to. So again, those little things happen. Client never knew. Client was never worried. We had it under control. We had a great wall. We did a fantastic reveal. Everyone was amazed and happy. These trestle tables stood there. They were secured. They stood there for 2 days of the conference, so the image could be hung and sort of learn from that and move on.
That's fantastic. I love that story. I have so many stories where I've, as a lead facilitator, have talked to my assistants, some of whom have never done this sort of thing before. And I look at them and I go, here's the most important thing you need to know. Whatever happens, no matter how bad, that's exactly what was supposed to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think, it's, again, just going back to that experience, and when you're engaging a provider with all of that experience and expertise. And look, we've had little things where, particularly in the virtual world, where, a server might be down for one of our events, which you rely on to deliver an event virtually. But then you can pick up the phone and ring one of 100 people anywhere around the world and tap into their expertise. Hey, this has just happened. I need some help. Have you got any ideas? What do you recommend? And I think, if we look at other team building providers in New Zealand, unfortunately, they probably don't have that network or that expertise or experience to call on when they need it. And it's not about going, hey, we know everything. It's just about going, there are literally 100 people in my mobile phone around the world that I can call on that do what I do, have been doing it for a long time, and have had different experiences that might be able to help me in my situation, whatever that might be.
Well put, Stu. Thank you very much. Just a quick shout out, though. Do you have anybody in your team there in New Zealand for team up events that you want to give some love to? Do you want to say that without this person, I don't think that we certainly couldn't have not survived, but that this past year would have been much harder than it needed to be?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I don't want to play favourites, and
sure.
If you mention one, then obviously you have a few that might feel a little bit left out. But it's
Fair enough.
definitely, I think, we're a team building company, and team is very much at the forefront of what we do, but it's also at the forefront of how we operate internally as well. And we're very lucky that last year, it was a tough time for us here in New Zealand, even though we may have had a little bit more freedom and flexibility compared to a lot of other countries around the world. But definitely from March through to sort of August, September, it was a tough time for our team. And I think that's where you really pull on the strength of your personal relationships with your team and the relationships across the team. And one of the most, I suppose, positive or pleasing things is just how everyone was able to pull together, how everyone was able to push forward and go, right, how do we actually keep this bus moving? How do we continue to help our client? And knowing that, hey, we will get through this. So look, I think, and most Catalyst partners would probably say the same, it's been a real team effort, not only here in New Zealand, but our partners in Australia, B Challenge Team Building, fantastic group of guys, similar ethos and values to ourselves. We've been helping them with virtual events. They've been helping us with virtual events, right through to our partners, Asia Ability, Team Building Asia, up through Asia. There's been a lot of crossover as well with support on virtual facilitation. So, it's really been a global effort. And as much as we joke that it was, team building around the world or team building saves the world, it's been Catalyst has saved team building in terms of the way we've been able to work together.
Fantastic. And thanks for the shout out for my show. That's great. Stu, thank you so much for coming on board with me. I've really, really enjoyed talking to you and finding out what the other side of the world has been looking like through all this. But now you might wind up hating me just a little bit because we're going to go into my speed round. All right, Stu, here's how this is going to work. I'm going to play us music that will actually go for about 60 seconds. During that time, I'm going to ask you a series of questions. The objective of all this is just to give me the shortest, quickest answer you can come up with, whatever is the top of your head. We have a number to beat of 13. So whether it's a correct answer or not correct answer, doesn't matter. Just try to get as many as you can within 60 seconds. You think you're up for it?
I'm up for it. Let's go.
Here we go. What's your name?
Stu.
How many children?
3.
Which one's your favorite?
All of them.
That's always the answer. Who's your favorite musician?
Which one? 660.
Nice. Yep. What would you do if you were invisible for a day?
What I do if I was invisible for a day? I just walk around the office, actually. It'd be quite interesting.
Would you rather, if you could time travel, visit the past or the future?
Future.
Okay. If you can live in any television home, what home would it be?
Fringe.
And one thing you remember from kindergarten?
Kicking a soccer ball.
What age should you get married at?
Oh, completely up to you. No. Well, obviously you have to be older than 16, but up to you.
I'll count it. You were a little slow on that one, but that's okay. I'm going to count it in there. You hit 9. 9
Wow.
answers correctly done. Ladies and gentlemen, please, a big round of applause all the way from Auckland, New Zealand for Stu Robertson.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stu. I hope you had as good a time being here as I did. Once again, team, that's it for me and another episode of Team Building Saves the World. Special thanks once again to my guest, Stu Robertson. You can find Stu and his team at their website, teamupevents.co.nz. And you can now find us on all of our social medias at Team Bond Podcast, or just look for Team Building Saves the World. And don't forget, leave us that comment that I might read on future episodes. If you like this show, please share it with a friend or a colleague, and we'd be so grateful if you could subscribe to us on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your favorite podcasts. All past episodes can be found at teambonding.com. Well, team, that's it. I'm Rich Riddensland, and if you are within the sound of my voice, never forget that now you are on my team, and I am always on yours. Thanks again, everyone, and we will see you next time.
been said that you learn more about a person in an hour of play than in a year of conversation. So why not put your coworkers to play with the help of the team at Team Bonding? Team Bonding was founded over 20 years ago with one simple question: how can employees have a great time while fostering strong, authentic bonds between people who work together? Their catalog of innovative events includes scavenger hunts, Jeopardy, and much more. Each activity, whether live, virtual, or hybrid, maximizes the impact of team building with an accent on fun. Visit teambonding.com to schedule your event now. Team Bonding, when you want seriously fun results.